Hi, everyone. I hope you all are enjoying the conference so far. I first want to thank DQ and the AxCon organizers for allowing me to be here talking to you today. In case you don't know me, my name is Alicia Jarvis. I have light brown hair, brown eyes, and today I'm wearing a blue AxCon t-shirt that reads "Digital equality is my jam." My pronouns are she and her, and I'm currently a senior digital accessibility specialist at Scotiabank. Before joining Scotia, I spent the last 6 years at RBC, and I've been working in accessibility and inclusive design for over 12 years now. In this talk, we'll be talking about how to make your design practice a little more inclusive. Thank you all for joining me today. So to break it down, I'll be going over what inclusive design is, how it differs from accessibility and accessible design. We'll go over some guiding principles, and then we'll dive right into design research, interaction design, content design, and I will end my talk with visual design. Hopefully by the end of this talk, you will all have some practical takeaways that you can use in your own design practice. I've left lots of time at the end for questions, comments, and discussion, so let's keep the conversation going. Before we get started, I want you all to think back about a time in your life where you felt excluded or that you didn't fit in. It could be that time that you didn't get invited to the party, or when that boy didn't ask you to the dance. Or maybe it was when the entire room was staring at you for whatever reason and that you still don't understand. The point is that most of us have experienced it and have felt what it feels like. It doesn't feel too good, does it? Now I want you to think about a time in your life where you really felt seen. Really seen. It could be that time when you won an award for something that you were really passionate about. Or maybe it was that time you made the winning shot in front of the entire school. Or maybe it was that time you finally got that promotion that you were really gunning for. Or perhaps it was that time that your friends threw you an epic surprise party. That feeling that you're feeling right now, it feels really good, right? That's what inclusion feels like. And I want you to keep that in mind for the rest of my talk. Now let me tell you a bit more about me. A very smart man named Cliff Chatterton once told me that the computer will be the great equalizer. You see, I was born with short arms, and being a well-decorated veteran, an amputee himself, he knew that a double arm amputee like me may require some assistive technology to help level the playing field and allow me to keep up with my peers. Writing and drawing with a traditional pencil and paper was never my strong suit. From a very young age, I used either a typewriter or a computer to get stuff done. And yes, I'm probably aging myself right now. The first picture on the left is of me at a young age wearing myoelectric arms, holding an upside down pencil, typing on a typewriter. And the photo on the right is another picture of me as a youngster, typing on a computer without my myoelectrics by holding a similar upside down pencil with a large rubber end on it. If we fast forward to today, I can tell you that now I only type with just my fingers. So as you see here, as I got older, my preferences, my needs, and my assistive technology has changed over time. Throughout my life, my knowledge, skills, and abilities, and the ways in which I view myself has also changed. If you asked me 5 years ago if I ever considered myself a designer, I probably would have just looked at you funny because my background is not in design and I did not go to design school. My academic background is actually in criminology and behavioral science. So I want to take a moment to just level set on what I mean by design in the context of this talk. A few years ago, when I joined the digital design team at RBC, I was introduced to this quote by Herbert Simon. Everyone designs who devises courses of action aimed at changing existing situations into preferred ones. I'll repeat that for you. Everyone designs who devises courses of action aimed at changing existing situations into preferred ones. I did some deep thinking, and while I may not have gone to design school, I'm definitely a designer. I realized I've been doing this my whole life. You see, I was born into a world that was not designed for me. So I've had no choice but to devise courses of action aimed at changing existing situations into something that works for me. So you might have guessed. The next question that I had after realizing I was in fact a designer was, what is inclusive design anyways? And how does it differ from accessibility? Well, here's the distinction. Inclusive design is design that considers the full range of human diversity with respect to ability, language, culture, gender, age, and other forms of human difference. Whereas accessible design is a design process in which the needs of people with disabilities are specifically considered. So the way I like to look at it is, inclusive design is a methodology, and accessibility is an outcome of that methodology, if that makes sense. Inclusive design attempts to acknowledge the intersectional nature of human beings. For example, I'm not a woman on Monday and a person with a disability on Tuesday. In addition to my gender and ability, my culture, heritage, socioeconomic status, language, and age all help shape how I experience the world. To give you a common example of inclusive design that we can all relate to, have you ever struggled with a doorknob? Either your hands were wet or you had gloves on. Doorknobs can be particularly tricky in many situations. I have short arms, and doorknobs are the bane of my existence. However, doors with levers allow me and many other arm amputees open doors with ease. Door levers also benefit people with arthritis and other dexterity challenges, whereas doorknobs are often problematic for a lot of people because they depend on a very specific hand function. In other words, my friend Billy Gregory summed it up like this. When user experience doesn't consider all users, it should be called some user's experience. Yes, sucks. So now I couldn't do a design talk without talking about principles, could I? As you can imagine, designing within the financial services sector requires looking at the entire customer journey across all channels. Most of us interact with our bank in many different ways, both online and in person. So it's very important that before we start even thinking about the digital experience, we start with the 7 principles of universal design, which are equitable use, flexibility in use, simple and intuitive, perceptible information, tolerance for error, low physical effort, and size and space for approach and use. Then, as we focus more on the digital experience, the 7 principles of inclusive design are there to guide us further. These are, number 1, provide comparable experience. Number 2, consider situation. Number 3, be consistent. Number 4, give control. Number 5, offer choices. Number 6, prioritize content. And number 7, add value. In the interest of time, I will not be covering these principles in depth, but you can check them out at inclusivedesignprinciples.org. And then if we drill down further, we get the 4 principles of accessibility, which are perceivable, operable, understandable, and robust, or poor. All of these principles help to guide us in creating a more inclusive user experience, and it's important to ensure these principles fit into our day-to-day as designers. I'm sure that we would all be better designers if we use these principles as a starting point to work from. We must all remember that inclusion is a continuous journey of learning, unlearning, and relearning. It is not a destination. With that, let's talk about research. Earlier, I showed you a photo of me wearing my electric arms. What you probably didn't realize was when I was much younger, my doctors told me I couldn't have prosthetics because I had hands, and they had never seen someone like me wear prosthetic limbs. So with the help of the More Amps, I did some research on my own and found a picture of two identical twins from Germany who, just like me, had short arms and were fitted with prosthetic arms. The key message here is don't skip your desk research. There's a lot of information out there if you just look for it. It is a researcher's job to ask the hard questions. In order to have an inclusive research practice, you have to first acknowledge and recognize exclusion in all its forms. To quote Kat Holmes, designing for inclusion starts with recognizing exclusion. People are not boxes, and labels are for food, not people. One person's experience is exactly that, one person's experience. Don't expect one person to represent an entire race or group of people. Yes, I have a disability and I'm a woman, but I cannot and will not speak for or on behalf of all women with disabilities. I can only speak from my own experiences. So instead, what you want to do is continuously ask, who is not here? Why aren't they here? And what can we do about it? I wore prosthetic arms from the time I was about 5 years old until well into high school. And not once did I meet a prosthetist that was an amputee themselves. This automatically created a disconnect between the prosthetist who was designing my arms and myself. They didn't fully understand my needs or my wants. They often came into the conversation with assumptions based on stereotypes. Like when I started telling them that my arms just weren't working for me, they responded with, well, don't you want them for aesthetic purposes? What about dating and relationships? Like, really? If a guy really cares that much about the length of my arms, do you think I want him anyways? Come on, my mama taught me better than that. So if you want to create a product that is accessible and effective for everyone, start by looking around you and consider who is designing the product or experience. Does your design team reflect a diverse talent pool, or does your organization have some work to do? In any case, you can immediately start making your research practice more inclusive by involving everyone. And I mean everyone. Be intentional about how you conduct your research and with whom. Encourage broad participation in research activities by using inclusive language in your recruitment and research materials. Actively seek out design input from people who don't look like you or sound like you. Interview individuals who represent a wide range of human diversity to understand their context and methods of accessing technology. Ask questions that consider outliers or alternate points of view. Synthesize and implement interview insights and user considerations into every single project. Test content, prototypes, and visuals with people who have varying abilities or use different access methods. And finally, implement changes based on research findings and user feedback, not assumptions. As the good designers you all are, you probably noticed that I didn't tell you why my prosthetic arms weren't working for me. This brings me to creating inclusive interactions. Since I was born with hands, I had to unlearn and relearn a lot of things when I was finally fit with prosthetic arms. So there was a huge learning curve in using them. I couldn't feel what I was holding, which made things like eating a banana particularly difficult. I already had alternate ways of doing things, like using my feet to reach something that was far away. The sockets were hot and made my hands sweat, so frustration ultimately outweighed any potential benefits of value and that they might have had. This is not to say that I regret trying them. It's actually quite the opposite. All those years of trial and error taught me a lot about myself, and it also taught me a lot about design. It taught me that my disability was not a problem that I needed to solve. The disability itself is just a mismatched interaction between the features of a person's body and the features of the environment in which they live. It taught me that sometimes we focus on the wrong thing. Instead of trying to fix the features of my body, I started looking at adjusting the features of my environment, which resulted in much happier outcomes. Let me tell you. The key takeaway here is that instead of looking at people with disabilities as a small niche subset of users, it is important for interaction designers to understand and learn from the mismatches in our society, because that's the only way to improve our craft and grow as designers. So with that, before you even think about firing up a screen reader, please take some time to really learn keyboard interaction. It will make you a better designer, and your users will be truly thankful that you did. Keyboard accessibility is one of the most important aspects of digital accessibility. People with mobility or dexterity disabilities rely on keyboards for navigation. Blind individuals typically use a keyboard for navigation in combination with screen readers. And other assistive technology mimic keyboard functionality. Next, use design annotations to help you, not because the accessibility person told you to do it. Interaction models will help you provide context for navigation and list the different elements and interaction needed within the application. Remember, wireframes are both project documentation and a visual communication guide. So make annotations part of your workflow to eliminate misunderstandings or confusion along the way. Talk with your development team. Don't feel obligated to capture everything all at once. Iterate and use whatever method works for you and your team. And leverage a legend for greater clarity. Now let's take a minute to talk about my favorite subject, inclusive content. As the old adage goes, content is king or queen, depends on how you look at it. Without content, my whole talk would just be an empty page. Pretty boring, right? So there are two main aspects to think about when we think of inclusive content. Both are equally important. The substance, or in other words, what the content is saying, and the presentation, or how the content is being presented. First, let's talk about the what. As content designers, you know that language is a powerful thing that can be used to either include or exclude your users. And with great power comes great responsibility. You can easily start making your language more inclusive by doing these 5 things. Number 1, avoid descriptors that refer to a person's race, gender, sexual orientation, disability, or age, unless those descriptors are relevant to the story. And really make sure that those descriptors are actually relevant to the story. When possible, omit gender-specific pronouns, because why use them? Unless it's relevant to the story, it's probably not applicable. Replace third person with second person pronouns. Replace adjectives with neutral alternatives, such as indefinite adjectives, substantives, or objects. And avoid the use of black, white, dark, or light as metaphors, for obvious reasons I won't get into. Secondly, you want to ensure the experience is as intuitive and seamless as possible. In other words, don't make me think. Use plain language. Give just the info your users need right when they need it. Keep sentences short and sweet. Aim for 5th to 8th grade readability. Write meaningful link text. Create text alternatives for charts and graphs. And use descriptive alt text for images, icons, and controls. If the text is meant to be read, don't put it in an image. And ensure semantically meaningful page structure by using headings and paragraphs appropriately. Which brings me to visual design. Visual design plays a significant role in communicating a brand's proposition and personality. Remember the dress from 5 or 6 years ago? You know, the one. Was it blue and black, or was it white and gold? It caused quite the uproar on social media. This little color illusion reminded us all that color is almost never seen as it really is. We all see color slightly differently, and our perception is literally colored by the context in which we view it, such as a device's screen and the surrounding environment. You might have a shadow or something off your wall or window. So visual designers, please do not use color alone to convey meaning, and always test your designs with a color contrast analyzer tool. The simplest place to start is to design in grayscale, as this forces you to consider layout, typography, and visual balance before tackling the subjectiveness of color. The design should be clear and easy to read, with a thought-through text hierarchy in terms of position on the page, size, weight, and shade. By starting in grayscale, it also forces you to not use color alone to convey meaning. And as you add color to your design, remember that color is an inexact and relative art form. Being inexact, we need to select colors that will perform well within a range of environments. This should not be underestimated, as roughly 8% of men and 0.5% of women worldwide are living with some form of colorblindness. Your choice of colors will depend on the look and feel of your brand's visual identity. This is time for experimentation, and you will want to use a color contrast analyzer tool to help you get the look and feel that you want. Ultimately, visual design is about creating delight for all your users. And my friend Rich Donovan said it best. Customer and employee delight is the goal, all day, every day. Understanding and delivering actions that delight define whether or not revenue is maximized. Diverse demand has changed how great brands deliver delight. Are you ready to unleash different? I don't know about you, but I'm more than ready to unleash different. We have a very real opportunity right now to build back better, and I'm hopeful that we will. Not too long ago, I asked a former colleague what he thought the role of visual designers were in non-visual interfaces, and he couldn't really give me a good answer. My answer was this: it is the role of visual design to create delight. Visual designers have a very important role to play for non-visual interfaces because it is their job to understand what a desirable, pleasurable, and delightful experience really feels like. It is really easy to say that an icon or that image is just decorative. It is much harder to take a step back and ask yourself, why did I choose that particular icon or image? Is there something I want my users to get from it? I hope you keep this in mind the next time you and your team are deciding what the alt text should be on a particular image or icon. I know I've covered a lot today, but I hope some of this helps you in your journey of making this world a better and more inclusive place for everyone. Thank you.
Thanks, Thanks, Alicia. That was fantastic. We have a number of questions coming from our audience right now. So I'm going to start firing them off.
All right.
One of the questions are, where can we see more of how to best annotate with accessibility?
So a resource that I found and I particularly like is actually Accessibility Blue Lines. It was shown in my slide. But I think what you have to kind of realize about annotating for accessibility is that the way you annotate is going to depend on the needs of your team. Because you, like I said, you don't want to annotate everything. You don't want to annotate things that you don't have to either. So it really is a thing to have a conversation with your team with.
Awesome. From Mark, he has a question. Do you have a favorite source for inclusive language?
That's a really good one. There's some inclusive language guides out there. I don't have a favorite, but please share your favorites with me on social media, because I mean there are some out there, but I think that's where we can improve as an industry.
So we have a question that says, you say to not use gender, race, disability, etc. in descriptive text. Why will we only allow those details to be available for those who are sight enabled? Why will we not provide those same details to those who are not sight enabled?
Oh, so I didn't say for non-sighted or sight enabled. It's in general. You shouldn't use those descriptors unless it's relevant to the story. So because you really don't know someone's preferences and the way that they choose to identify themselves. So if it's not needed for the story, just leave those out.
Got it. Thank you. And what are the different strategies you recommend for inclusive design?
So I think basically have a curious mindset is the number one strategy. Is always ask why, ask the 5 whys, and really take a learner's mentality to design. You know, we're all learning to be better designers. So I would say that's the best strategy for inclusion.
And that one, there's another question that kind of relates to this is, how do we go about the research you were referring to?
Okay, so when you're doing your research activities, you really have to just get out there. You have to, you know, meet different people, use social media and networking to your advantage, and access different people that you might not have talked to before. There are certain services out there like Fable Tech that can help you recruit participants for your research, for sure. But really, it's about just expanding your network and inviting different people into your research practice.
Awesome. I have a question from another participant. I work in a design agency and we work with many different clients. A common issue, this just jumped. A common issue I run into when running accessibility training is convincing clients to use inclusive language. Do you have any tips for getting buy-in?
My main thing for getting buy-in, and this is kind of pre-COVID, but is meeting them at Starbucks or the coffee shop and just having a regular conversation with them. I think bringing a positive personality to the conversation is key. It's not just about always convincing people, but it's just about meeting them where they're at and seeing if we can find some common ground, and then iteratively moving from there.
That makes sense. So I have a question from Vanessa. I am so confused about whether to use the word click. I've heard to use select. I've also been told never use select unless it's for a list or something like that. There doesn't seem to be an agreement on a button action word. I've heard click is universal and not considered ableist language. What are your thoughts about that?
I actually prefer select because not everyone clicks. So when you use select, it also helps your QA folks write their test cases in a way that they can run the same test case for over multiple devices. So select is a more inclusive term because you can select on a mobile phone. So that could describe touch. It could describe a keyboard. It could describe a switch control or another assistive device. So it's not really specific. So that way you can use whatever you're doing, your annotations and things for over multiple devices.
That makes sense. So I have another participant's note. Awesome presentation. How has computer access changed for you over time? Do you require non-mainstream tools to do all that you would like to do in your work these days?
That's a really good question. So the answer is No, I don't require anything that's non-mainstream anymore. But when I was younger, I actually tried Dragon Naturally Speaking back in like the early 90s, when you literally had to train your dragon and have a silent room. And you can imagine how horrible the experience was as a child going through that. Now we have voice technology in our homes, right? With Siri and Alexa and that sort of thing. It's become mainstream. So it's not necessarily considered an assistive technology anymore to use your voice.
Can you give some examples on what are the do's and don'ts for inclusivity words?
Sure. So first of all, when in doubt, always use person first language. So, and I say that because you don't know how someone identifies. Like, for example, I don't really identify as a disabled woman. I do identify as a woman with a disability. So when in doubt, always use person first language. And also, when you're describing someone's disability, it's important to realize that assistive technology and wheelchairs are not things that are negative, right? So you wouldn't say someone that's bound or confined to a wheelchair, because a wheelchair can actually be quite liberating, and that's the way someone gets around and stuff like that. So just be cognizant of how you're describing people, and that it's always in a positive light.
Great. Lastly, we have a question about what other resources do you recommend to learn more about this topic?
That's a great question. So, I mean, there's a lot of resources out there. The UX Research Collective has just done a conference that there was a lot of great speakers. I read a lot of books, so seek those books out. Like I mentioned a few in my talk. So Mismatch by Kat Holmes, and also Rich Donovan's book Unleash Different. But really, I mean, talk to different people, get a lot of different resources. That's what I would say. Just expand your book list and expand the resources that you use today.
Thank you so much, Alicia. Do you have any final comments you want to make to the team we have here?
Just thank you, and I hope your evening is absolutely wonderful, and I hope you enjoyed my talk. And you can follow me on Twitter at Alicia, or you can connect with me on LinkedIn.
Thank you so much, Alicia, for this great session. And thank you to everyone who joined us. Hope you enjoy the rest of AXCON.